He only wanted to drop off some homemade bread for his daughter. But one kind gesture turned into a humiliation that spiraled into something much bigger. What happened next changed everything. Let me tell you something right off the bat. Turning 70 isn't for the faint of heart. Your knees creak like the floorboards in an old cabin. Your back has more opinions than a political commentator. And suddenly, everyone treats you like you're made of glass. And heaven forbid you try to do something useful. Because once you hit that magic number, the world seems to think you're better off sitting still and staying silent. My name's George. I'm 74, thank you very much. I still mow my own lawn, fix my own roof, on good days, and bake a banana bread that could bring a grown man to tears. My wife Marjorie used to call me obsessively homemade. She passed 5 years ago, and since then, I've held on to this house and my habits like lifelines. Now, last Sunday, I made a mistake. A big one. I did something nice. I packed up some groceries for my daughter Sarah. My banana bread, some homegrown apples, a jar of local honey. She had just had surgery, and last we spoke, she sounded tired. I called ahead. No answer. So I did what any decent father would do. I showed up anyway. That was apparently mistake number one. Brian, her husband, opened the door. He looked at me like I was the cable guy coming 2 hours late. "Oh," he said, "it's you." "No, hi." "No, thanks for coming. Just, it's you." "I brought some things for Sarah," I said, holding up the bag. "She's resting," Brian replied, not even pretending to appreciate it. "You really shouldn't come without calling." I did call. She didn't answer. Maybe take the hint next time. I blinked. I was just trying to help. You always are. Maybe let us handle things on our own. And just like that, he took the bag and shut the door. I was left standing on the porch like I was handing out flyers. That night, Sarah called. Not to thank me, not even to apologize. "Dad, we need to talk about boundaries," she said. "Boundaries?" "Brian says you're overstepping." Overstepping. I'd raised that girl, cleaned up her messes, paid her tuition. Now suddenly, I was some kind of problem. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept staring at the ceiling like it had answers. Around 3:47 a.m., I sat up in bed and looked at Marjorie's photo. Her smile never changed. I whispered, "What did I do wrong?" No answer. Just silence and the quiet hum of the fridge down the hall. The week didn't get better. I kept helping people. It's who I am. I helped my elderly neighbor Mary fix her mailbox, bought a warm lunch for a man outside the pharmacy, repaired a kid's bike chain near the park. No applause, no fanfare, just kindness. But the world doesn't seem to know what to do with kindness anymore. Sarah didn't text. Tom, my son, skipped our weekly check-in. And when I suggested starting a local group for older folks at the community meeting, a woman interrupted me mid-sentence. "We're looking for a younger image," she said. Younger image? What does that even mean? What part of caring about people needs a rebrand? At the grocery store, a cashier offered to help me with the self-checkout. "I got it," I said. "You sure? These machines confuse my grandpa." "I built computers before she was born," I muttered under my breath. Outside, I reminded a group of teenagers not to skateboard down my driveway. One of them laughed and said, "Relax, old man. It's not your sidewalk." Not your sidewalk. Last winter, I shoveled snow from their walkway while their parents were sipping cocoa. But sure, I guess respect doesn't come with a memory these days. I decided to visit my son Tom. I didn't bring food or advice or even expectations. Just me. His wife opened the door. "Oh, George, did we have plans?" "Number I just thought I'd stop by." She gave me a polite smile, the kind that doesn't reach the eyes. Now's not really a good time. Maybe next week? Right. Maybe. Or maybe never. That night, I sat in my chair with a yellow notepad. I wrote across the top, "The 5 things I'm apparently not supposed to do after 70. Show up without texting, help people without permission, talk without being asked, give advice based on experience, believe I still matter." I stared at the list. Then I crossed out the title and wrote a new one. "The 5 things that make me human." That's the thing they don't tell you about aging. It's not the wrinkles or the gray hair. It's the quiet way the world starts pushing you aside, piece by piece, until one day you realize you're not part of the picture anymore. You're just the frame. But here's the part they really don't expect. I wasn't ready to be invisible. Not yet. What happened next changed everything. You don't want to miss how it all unfolded. It only gets more intense from here. I used to think getting older meant slowing down. Turns out, it just means getting stepped over more often and realizing you've got to shout louder just to be heard. And I wasn't about to whisper my way into oblivion. After the whole "you're too much" episode with Sarah and Brian, I tried to brush it off. Told myself people were busy. That modern life had everyone racing in circles. That maybe my kindness really was overkill. But that's the trick with doubt. It doesn't knock on your door, it creeps in like a draft. Quiet, constant, chilling. So the following Thursday, I did what I always do when I need to reset. I went to the farmer's market. The air smelled like cinnamon, wet earth, and overpriced lavender oil. My usual egg lady, Carol, waved to me. "Still walking better than half the guys my age," I joked as I approached. She smiled. "I swear you must have made a deal with the devil. You don't age." If only. What I wouldn't give to trade a few laugh lines for a conversation with someone who didn't talk to me like I was fragile glassware. I grabbed my eggs, a few tomatoes, and some peaches. As I turned the corner, I spotted this tall man, mid-30s, scruffy beard, yelling into his phone like it owed him money. His kid, maybe 4 or 5, stood nearby, clinging to a stuffed tiger. Then it happened. The man, still fuming, yanked the child by the arm. Not hard enough to injure, but hard enough to make the tiger hit the pavement. The boy didn't cry. He just looked down at his fallen friend, then up at his father. That look? I've seen it before. On Marjorie's face when doctors dismissed her pain. On Sarah's when she was 6 and a neighbor boy pushed her into a bush. That silent helplessness. I walked over, picked up the tiger, brushed it off, and gently handed it to the boy. "There you go, partner," I said. His father looked at me like I'd just insulted his ancestors. "Mind your business," he barked. I raised an eyebrow. "I was, until you made it mine." He muttered something under his breath and stormed off, dragging the boy behind him. I turned back toward Carol's stall and suddenly felt it. The heat. Not from the sun, but from the stares. People weren't angry. They weren't sympathetic either. They were awkward. Like I'd made the situation uncomfortable. Like I should have just stayed silent and let the scene play out. Apparently, in 2025, it's fine to pull your kid around like a rag doll. But heaven help you if you interrupt the show. Later that day, I sat on the bench outside the pharmacy, flipping through a newspaper no one reads anymore. A woman in her 40s approached me. Stylish, confident, polished. "Excuse me," she said cautiously. "Are you the man from the market?" "I've been many men in many markets," I replied. She laughed, a little forced. "No, I mean, with the little boy?" I nodded. "Well, some of the vendors were talking. They said you escalated things." I tilted my head. Escalated. I handed a kid his toy. Right, but we're trying to maintain a peaceful environment and you're afraid a 74-year-old man handing a child a stuffed animal is a liability? She paused. It's just, today, people are sensitive. No kidding. She walked off, leaving me there with my overpriced peaches and a fresh sense of rejection. That night, I went online. Not to complain, just to understand. I found forum after forum filled with stories like mine. Seniors being treated like furniture, like background noise, like outdated technology you keep around out of guilt. It wasn't just me. It was a pattern, a system. They don't want you to rock the boat. They want you quiet, grateful, invisible. So I did what they absolutely didn't expect. I started talking. I created a blog, nothing fancy, just a black and white page titled Not Dead Yet. I wrote about Brian, about Sarah, about that boy at the market and the woman at the pharmacy. I didn't name names. I didn't rant. I told the truth, my truth, with wit, with sarcasm, with the kind of clarity you only earn after watching decades roll by. And people responded. The first post got 12 views, then 46. By the end of the week, over 1,200 people had read it. I got emails from all over the country. You put into words what I've been feeling for years. I thought I was the only one. Please, keep writing. You're not invisible to me. I sat there at my old wooden desk, staring at the blinking cursor like it was a heartbeat. And I felt it. Not pride, not revenge, relief. Like someone had finally opened the window in a room that had been sealed shut. Of course, not everyone was thrilled. Sarah called. I heard you've been blogging? I have. Dad, people are asking questions. Brian says it's embarrassing. Brian can keep being embarrassed. He's good at that. You're making us look bad. No, sweetheart. You're doing that all by yourself. She hung up. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel the need to call back and apologize. A week later, my neighbor Tom, that's other Tom, not my son, knocked on my door. He's in his 60s. Quiet guy. Keeps to himself. I read your post, he said. Would you mind if I shared it with our community group? I smiled. Please do. Let them know the old guy still has a few things to say. And that was just the beginning. This is the turning point. Everything you've been waiting for. It starts now. Stick around to see what happens when the quiet old man refuses to stay quiet. Let me tell you something about dignity. It's not given, it's taken back. And in my case, I wasn't just taking it back. I was dragging it through the street with a bullhorn and a vengeance. After my blog, Not Dead Yet, picked up steam, things started to change. At first, it was subtle. The clerk at the grocery store called me Sir instead of Sweetie. The neighbor who never waved suddenly remembered my name. Even the HOA president, who used to treat me like a lawn ornament, asked if I'd be interested in mentoring at the community center. I should have felt validated, but I didn't. You know why? Because it wasn't respect. It was damage control. A patch job. People don't suddenly grow a conscience overnight. They just start sweating when they realize you're no longer a doormat. And guess who didn't like the new me? Brian. He showed up to my house, unannounced. How ironic. I need to talk, he said, shifting on the porch like a kid about to confess to breaking a window. Funny, that's exactly what I've been doing. Talking. Look, George, the blog's making people uncomfortable. I leaned against the doorframe. You mean it's making you uncomfortable? It's affecting Sarah. Her friends keep asking questions. I crossed my arms. And what do they ask? Why her father has a pulse and an opinion? You're painting us in a bad light. Son, I didn't paint you. I described you. He paused, tried the puppy eyes approach. Could you, maybe, take it down? I stared at him, long and hard. You came to my house, looked me in the eye, and asked me to silence myself because the truth bruised your image? He looked like he might argue, but instead he just muttered, I thought you were better than this, and walked off. Better than what, exactly? Better than being a doormat? A shadow? A convenient grandparent who drops off casseroles and vanishes into thin air? Not anymore. I doubled down. I started a weekly column called George Says, and I didn't hold back. One post was titled, The 5 Phrases That Make Seniors Disappear and Why You Should Stop Using Them. Another, Yes, I still have a brain. And no, I don't need your app to prove it. I talked about everything. Ageism, family hypocrisy, digital isolation, passive-aggressive parenting. And I did it with the kind of wit that only 70-plus years of watching people lie to themselves can provide. The responses poured in. My daughter read this and cried, said she finally saw me. I printed this and put it on my fridge. You just described every Sunday dinner of my life. Then came the emails from journalists, small local papers, regional radio. One woman from a podcast called Silver Voices wanted to do a whole episode on me. Can we record at your place? She asked. Sure, I said, but I'm not tidying up for your aesthetic. She laughed. We recorded at my kitchen table, next to a half-drunk cup of tea and a stubborn ant that refused to die. The episode dropped. It went viral. The grandpa who won't shut up, and thank God for that. People started quoting me online. George Says memes popped up. Even TikTok had videos of people reading my blog aloud. Some young guy with a beard called me the unofficial spokesperson for the disrespected elderly. I didn't ask for any of this. I just wanted my voice back. And then came the call. Sarah. She sounded tired, not angry, not defensive, just hollow. Dad, she said, we need to talk. I braced myself. Here comes the apology or the ambush, I thought. She came over that evening. No Brian, no kids, just her. She sat at the table, stared at her hands. I read everything, she said quietly. I didn't respond. I didn't know you felt that way. I raised an eyebrow. You never asked. She winced like I'd slapped her. You were always so strong. I guess I thought you didn't need to be heard. That right there? That's the problem. People assume silence means satisfaction. That if you're not complaining, everything's fine. You didn't think your dad needed to feel seen? I asked. She shook her head. I just thought you were doing okay. Well, I wasn't. I felt like wallpaper in your life. Decorative, forgotten, convenient. Tears filled her eyes. I'm sorry, she whispered. And for the first time in years, I believed her. Not because she said it, because she finally looked me in the eyes while saying it. That night, I wrote the hardest post of all. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means you remember without bleeding. I told the world what Sarah said. I didn't make her a villain. I made her real, flawed, confused, just like the rest of us. I wrote, they don't teach you how to parent your parents, but they also don't teach parents how to feel discarded. We're all fumbling through love with elbows out and blindfolds on. That post did more numbers than any other. It even got picked up by a national syndicate. Suddenly, I wasn't just George from the neighborhood. I was George from the movement. But let me make one thing crystal clear. This isn't about going viral or trending. or being the next social media darling. This is about reclaiming my worth, about reminding people that just because the world tells you to shut up and sit down doesn't mean you have to hand over the chair. I was invisible. Now I'm unavoidable. And I didn't do it by yelling. I did it by refusing to vanish quietly. Everything's about to come full circle. The truth, the reckoning, and the moment they never expected. Don't miss how it all ends. When you spend most of your 70s being treated like a side character in your own story, you don't expect to get a standing ovation in Act 4. But here I was. Not a hero, not a martyr, just a man with a pulse, a voice, and a whole lot less patience for nonsense than I used to have. A month after my podcast appearance aired, something strange started happening. People, actual strangers, began approaching me. At the diner, at the hardware store, even at the DMV, which, frankly, I didn't think anyone left alive. They'd say things like, "George, you said what I've wanted to say for 20 years. Thank you for reminding me I'm not alone. My father read your blog and finally opened up to me." These weren't likes, shares, or emojis. These were real people, with tired eyes, with history, with stories that had been gathering dust because no one ever asked them to speak. And you know what? For the first time in decades, I felt useful in a way casseroles and birthday checks never made me feel. I wasn't a burden. I was a blueprint. Then came the call that flipped everything. It was from the local senior center. "Mr. Thomas," the woman on the line said, "we're organizing a storytelling series for intergenerational families. Would you consider being our opening speaker?" I almost dropped the phone. Me? Speak? In front of people? "Yes. We think your perspective is needed." Now, I've fixed water heaters, rebuilt engines, and once delivered a calf on a camping trip. But public speaking? That was a different beast. Still, I said yes, because somewhere between writing blog posts at 2 a.m. and handing out banana bread to neighbors who barely smiled back, I'd realized something. If you want to be seen, you have to stand. So I stood. The event was on a Sunday afternoon. How poetic. The same day Sarah used to call me, before things got quiet. I wore my best shirt. The one Marjorie always said made my shoulders look broad. I stood behind a wooden podium, looking out at a sea of faces. Some young, some wrinkled, some somewhere in between. And I told them the truth, about how I used to shrink myself to make others comfortable, how I stopped showing up because I thought my kindness had become a burden, how I once believed that growing older meant fading away quietly. Then I paused, looked at the crowd, and said, but I was wrong. The room was silent, not bored silent, listening silent. I continued, what no one tells you is that invisibility doesn't happen all at once. It happens gradually. One, it's fine, Dad, we've got it. At a time, one missed call, one canceled visit, one comment about how you shouldn't be lifting that, or you don't need to worry about this. Until suddenly, you're not a person anymore. You're a placeholder. I saw nods, tears, even a few smirks when I dropped a line about Brian and his organic kale obsession. I ended with this. Being older doesn't mean you're done. It means you've got more to say than ever before. And if that makes people uncomfortable, good. Let them squirm. Let them adjust. Because we've been adjusting our entire lives. It's their turn now. I sat down to an applause that didn't feel polite. It felt earned. After the talk, Sarah came up to me. She hugged me. Not the guilty, polite kind. A real one. She whispered, I didn't know you had all that in you. I laughed. That's because you were too busy deciding who I was for me. She nodded, wiping her eyes. I'm proud of you, Dad. And for once, it didn't feel like a daughter saying something out of obligation. It felt like a woman realizing her father had a voice worth hearing. The blog kept growing. I started receiving letters from retirement homes asking for printed versions. Some group in Minnesota even made a reading circle out of my essays. But you know what changed the most? Me. I stopped apologizing for being present. I stopped asking for permission to care. I stopped treating aging like it was something to hide, instead of something to own. Now every Tuesday, I host a little group at the local library. We call it the Loud Ones. It's a mix of seniors, single moms, tired dads, and a few teenagers who are wiser than their TikTok histories would suggest. We don't do therapy. We do truth. One woman, 92, shared how her daughter refused to let her hold the baby because she looked tired. A man, late 60s, broke down saying he hadn't heard his own name in a week. We listened. We laughed. We cursed the silent cruelties of nice families. And we reminded each other that aging isn't a punishment. It's a damn badge of honor. The other day, Brian stopped by again. He stood on my porch, same as before. But this time, he held out a hand. I was wrong, he said. You were just ahead of us. I shook his hand. Didn't need revenge. Didn't need groveling. I'd already won. Now, when I walk into the market, I don't look down. I meet people's eyes. When someone talks over me, I talk louder. And when people ask, "Aren't you too old to be doing all this?" I smile and say, "No, I'm just on time." Because here's the thing. I didn't vanish. I transformed. And there's no going back. The world may not always value those who've lived the longest. But those who've lived the longest know how to value the world. And that, my friend, is where real power begins.